I would like to introduce you to Ken Wall, a very godly man and my dad.
Today is Saturday, June 20th, 2026. Last week, I left off with Ruth gleaning in the field. I'm sure many of you have seen the famous picture called The Gleaner. Every time I see it, I think it is Ruth portrayed at the far right of the painting. In Ruth 2:7, Boaz's servant says that she has continued from early morning until now, without resting even for a moment. When you look at the picture with all that bending over, it must have been very hard on her back. Yet Ruth was determined to get enough food for her and Naomi. Ruth continued gleaning all the way to supper time when Boaz once again asked Ruth to join him and starts off by giving her bread and wine. He was going all out to impress her. Then he gives her some parched grain. When I read this, I thought parched grain would taste like cardboard. But when I looked it up, I found it has a nutty and caramelized flavor. There were all these other young women working in the field, yet Boaz only has eyes for Ruth. He was so smitten with her that he made sure that she took home somewhere between 12 to 15 kilograms of barley. When Naomi saw this, she just couldn't believe how much Ruth had brought home. Not only that, but Ruth had only eaten a portion of the food that Boaz gave her and brought the rest of it for Naomi. Ruth is one considerate young woman. As the two of them are eating, in verse 19, Naomi asks, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name is Boaz." Now remember that Ruth had no idea who Boaz was until God led her into his field. But Naomi sure did, because he was a relative of her husband. This is the epitome of divine providence, as God had great plans for Ruth. This plan began from the moment that Ruth stepped onto the field, and it was the beginning of a beautiful romance that would always be remembered to the end of time. When Ruth told this about Boaz, I can just imagine Naomi choking on her grain. Then Naomi says in verse 20, "Blessed be the Lord, whose kindness has not forgotten the living and the dead." Then I can just imagine Naomi saying, "Oh, Ruth, you stuck by me. Now watch how God is going to do something great in your life." Right now, the wheels in Naomi's mind are spinning like crazy. And from that moment onward, Naomi started devising a plan that was going to secure a future for both her and Ruth. This was truly Naomi's jaw-dropping moment. But plans take time to implement. In the meantime, in verse 22, it says that Ruth continued to glean in the fields of Boaz for the entire duration of the barley and wheat harvest. This took about 2 months to finish. You can bet your sweet Bippy that during this time, Boaz visited his fields every day in order to get to know Ruth better. And as I said last week, as Ruth gleaned, Boaz leaned into taking a better look at Ruth. Face it, Boaz was in love with Ruth, but he took his time in getting to know her better as a person. Taking time to get to know each other is important in any relationship. That sure was true for Darlie and I. We never ran out of things to talk about, but one time we had something very interesting happen during one of our conversations. This happened during a second-year calculus course that we took together. The prof has such a heavy accent, and coupled with the fact that he spoke softly, made listening to him very difficult. The prof followed the textbook basically page by page. It was such a boring lecture, as you can imagine sitting there listening to someone muttering away when you can't understand a word he is saying. The wonderful thing about having a brilliant girlfriend that after each lecture, Dar would go through the textbook and teach me how to do everything. After all, if you have been watching my videos, Darlene is basically a genius when it comes to math. As in first year, she is the only student ever in the history of the math department to get a legitimate 104% in the applied math course she took. Her extra marks came from the fact that she got perfect on the main part of the exam and got every bonus question on the final exam perfect, hence 104%. The prof for that applied math course actually tried to get the registrar office to give her 104, but of course, she had to settle with a measly 100%. So, we would look at the prof putting things on the blackboard, but for every entire lecture, all we would do is talk. But one day, this sure backfired. The prof is writing something on the blackboard when all of a sudden he turns around, throws his chalk on the ground, he points at us and says, "I'm sick and tired of hearing the two of you talking." I thought, oh crap, we are in trouble now. I was just about to apologize to the prof when the guy 2 rows down says, "We are so sorry, sir. We won't do it again." Was I ever relieved? I immediately said to Dar, "Can you imagine the nerve of that guy talking all through the prof's lecture?" Darlene laughed. I honestly can't remember if we continued to talk during the following lectures, but if we did, we would have done it quietly. Next week, I'm going to tell you what Naomi has planned for Ruth. This next video is going to be called "Buy the Land, Get the Girl." May the good Lord be with you until we meet again next week.